We're here in Monte Carlo for the Rendez-Vous de Septembre. For AM Best TV, I'm Richard Banks. And I'm joined now by Patrick Tiernan, who's Chief of Market for Lloyds. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you, Richard.
So it's a very different outlook on the world from when we last gathered in Monte Carlo for the Reinsurance Rendezvous. What lessons do you think we can have learned from the last few years?
Well, I think the number one lesson for us at Lloyds is the level of uncertainty that we've seen in around the world in the last 3 years. I think when we think of everything that's happened, COVID, which has dominated, that's a 1 in 100 year event in our world. We see inflation coming through now at a rate that we haven't seen for the last 50 years. We have conflict on the continent of Europe for the first time in over 75 years. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. And I think from insurance perspective, that's our time to step up. That's when we're at our most crucial need. So if we take those man-made events and then we bring into the climate emergency that's facing us, we think we've got a critical role to play and a role that we can and should step up to. And I think in a week where in Britain we're mourning the passing of a much-loved sovereign, the incoming King Charles III, has inspired a lot of people in my generation and in our industry to actually focus on climate change as a critical risk. And I think there's a role there for us to play, and I think we'll play it well.
And in terms of that role, has the appreciation of insurance changed, do you think, in the past few years?
Yeah, I think it has. I think sometimes insurance can be a reluctant buy or a regulatory inspired buy, particularly in the personal lines sector. And very often insurance is thought about post-event. So I think what's quite unique in these circumstances is that we're looking at insurance from a pre-event standpoint. We're looking at what is coming and actually doing an awful lot more. The momentum for change, the momentum to mitigate rather than just protect, does feel different than it has done in my career to date. And I think the proof points are coming through as well. With the very unfortunate situation from a humanitarian perspective with what's going on in Ukraine, we see how the insurance industry has stepped up. A good example would be the grain corridor that's been co-sponsored by Turkey and the UN, that from an insurance perspective, Ascot and Marsh step up, provide that facility, and to my knowledge, over 2 million tons has moved since that was created a few weeks ago. So if we can get those proof points, if we can demonstrate our value, then I think we've got that great role to play.
So it's an interesting point, because one of the criticisms of the insurance industry is it's very good at dealing with the last issue, the last problem. How does they get on the front foot? What role does Lloyds perhaps have in that innovative marketplace?
Yeah, I think Lloyds has a very crucial role to play, because as an industry, we haven't always done a fantastic job of espousing the benefits that we bring to the world from a protection perspective, from a prevention perspective, but also from a risk management and risk mitigation perspective. And sometimes the actions we take aren't always particularly popular. Recently, we put out a bulletin from Lloyds demonstrating that we would like some more thinking about the separation of systemic risk from cyber, which is a new and an emerging product line. That isn't always met with universal acclaim, but what we are doing is demonstrating the thinking that we're doing to ensure there's a sustainable market and more certainty for customers, for clients, for cedents as we go forward. I think it may be a bit trite, but I think a simple rule of thumb is if we continue to put ourselves in the minds of the customer, the client, the cedent, then I think we'll get it right more often than we get it wrong.
Let's talk a little bit about the underwriting conditions that are prevalent in the marketplace at the moment. A lot of talk here in Monte Carlo about hard markets, potential hard markets. A lot of people won't have operated in a hard market before. Lloyd's obviously huge history behind it. What should we be looking out for? Where are the surprises going to come?
Yeah, I think these conversations about a hard market, impending hard market, have been had in Monte Carlo in recent years. So I would say we are in a market where we have hardening conditions rather than a hard market yet. I think where we need to look is at the deals bound rather than the sounds that come out of Monte Carlo in September. There's a little bit to go yet.
Yeah.
I think I think that you're right that a lot of people under the age of 40 won't have written in a hard market, and certainly won't have written in a market with hardening conditions and the inflationary threat and the affordability threat that's there for customers. So we've got a very important balance to strike as an industry between making sure that the capital gets paid a rate of return that's sustainable, so that that protection is there, but also that the products that we sell are actually affordable. So we've got to work quite in a nuanced way as to how that lands. So I think this, in terms of the conditions we're seeing and how we think about it from Lloyd's, I think we do see that if we were to bring inflation all the way through the asset schedules on the property side, that means that a lot more capacity is needed. The headlines would tell you that there's more capacity leaving than coming in. So there's a natural strain there. I think from what folks want protected going forward, when we were a little bit younger, the majority of the assets on a normal company balance sheet were real assets, were from the property side. I think 90% 50 years ago. It's now 90% of assets, or certainly 70% of assets, are of an intangible nature. So we've got to be creative as well as, and think beyond just price. We've got to think structure, we've got to innovate, and we've got to stay relevant to those customers. And last thing I'll say is, from Lloyd's perspective, we see it from a multitude of sides. We obviously have our oversight perspective, but we're overseeing insurers as well as reinsurers. So from an insurer's perspective, we need them to think, as they look at their plans, think about the availability of cover. We cede quite a lot of business from Lloyd's into the reinsurance market. So we need folks, as they think about their plans, to think about how much capital they need and how much they can protect their balance sheet with the reinsurance going forward, and be realistic about that with the upcoming conditions. And then from a reinsurer's perspective, it's a time of opportunity, and we need to be facilitative and be supportive of those who have the underwriting capability, who have the balance sheet, and who have the relationships to actually to thrive in this opportunity.
So Lloyd's uses cover holders for a lot of its business. Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of managing those relationships?
Yeah, I think I'd sort of go beyond cover holders. That Lloyd's is one of Lloyd's strengths is its international distribution and the support it gives to international distribution, and cover holders are obviously a critical part of that. So I think if I tack back to what we were just saying, we need to ensure that all elements of the chain are working in tandem, and that we have aligned interests through the chain. So I think we'll be ensuring that we're listening both ways, that the cover holders understand the demands of the market, understand the volatility there, so we don't get that break in affordability. And we need to ensure that we are bringing the best of Lloyd's through distribution. I mean, our brokers are an absolutely critical part of that distribution too, through the wholesalers, particularly in the US, and then back into the cover-holder market. So I think it's a coexistence that the more interests are aligned, the better we'll do for the next few years.
Patrick, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Pleasure, Richard.
For AM Best TV, I'm Richard Banks.